World Day for Safety and Health at Work, and it's important for me to mention that we now have Mr. Ernest Nadome, who is the Kotu Deputy Secretary General. We'll be linking up with him shortly. But first, I feel it's unfair for me to move on without asking for, a reaction from my panelists in studio, Dr. Musa Nyandusi, Dr. Andrew Muruka, and of course, Mr. Charles Owele, who is joining us live from Kisumu, and now Mr. Ernest Nadome. I need to get your reaction regarding that, what we just had right now, the address by the Ministry of Health, specifically on the measures to the restaurants and eateries that will reopen. Because, hey, our discussion today is on safety, and let's talk matters safety at these restaurants and eateries. If I could start with you, Dr. Nyandusi.
Thank you, Grace. I think, as you may have noticed, safety and health is actually key to the message by the Ministry of Health and the CAS. And the entire team. And what I would like to say is that in the Ministry of Labour, we do have a task force which is actually headed by the Cabinet Secretary that actually has been working in tandem with the National Task Force, the Ministerial Task Force. In this task force, we do have presentation by FKE and Kotu, as well as other players. And there is the safety and health measures, which are critical. You see, you need to be safe in the space where you are working. And we must support the Ministry of Health in the measures that have so far worked, insofar as we are looking at the numbers, the rise in the numbers, and the flattening of the curve. We can say that the strategies are working. The modeling they are talking about, it also is obviously being informed by a lot of science, and obviously we hope that it's going to remain to work. At the end of the day, you must embrace personal commitment to safety and health. I think the message that is being put out there is, yes, the government has provided guidelines, has provided the basis upon which this is going to be achieved, and there remains a responsibility of the citizens, because reference is made to, places where people already quickly opened pubs, and again, without following the protocol that has been followed. The Ministry of Labour, I must say that we remain committed, and indeed, in the Directorate of Occupational Safety and Health, we remain committed to this fight against the spread of COVID-19. And we do remain committed to conducting our roles as envisaged in both the acts and in the practices that we have. And of course, be alive to the mitigation that we need to think about the time beyond the pandemic, to still be able to keep to the safety and health measures that are going to be articulated even as we move towards the reopening. We are hearing people talking about the W curve, where now you get a decline and then you get a sudden rise again, and we need to work towards avoiding that setting. So I think from our point of view, one, COVID-19 will always be attacked from a multi-sectorial point of view. There is never going to be one player who is sufficiently going to be able to deal with it in its entirety. Number two, the government is doing what it's supposed to do, and we must support the advice and policies that have been put across by government. But number three, it is really important for us to integrate the issues of safety and health on a personal scale, because I think that's really what's going to make a difference.
Indeed, and you've raised a really important issue there on looking at, or rather focusing at, the time beyond the pandemic, and we'll be addressing that. Now, Dr. Muruka, I'll be coming to you, but let me first get Mr. Charles Owele from Kisumu. Let's get your reaction to, the address that we just had from the Ministry of Health, and specifically those guidelines to the restaurants and eateries.
Thank you, Grace. That's a proactive approach to the pandemic situation, and I think the government here has identified areas of demand in terms of facilitating the entrepreneurs and enabling the public within these tough conditions to be able to go around their operations. But it is a moral and ethic issue on the part of the entrepreneurs, even as the government gives this leeway. And of course, even the public should realize that everybody is responsible for the safety of self and community. So the critical factor here would be the manner of implementation of this opening, and I call upon the government to be as strict as possible, even as they give the leeway for those who have qualified as per the guidelines to open the premises.
Indeed. Dr. Andrew?
Thank you very much, Grace. I think it is very exciting to learn that there are two key measures that the government has taken today, and that is providing a protocol. If you look at this protocol keenly, you find that one of the key and fundamental foundations of occupational safety and health has been incorporated, and that is risk assessments and risk mitigation. What you see is that before you reopen, for example, you'll have to ensure that you have done, you have arranged the seats in accordance with the protocols. And more so, on a second level of mitigation is the issue of testing. I think it is so important to test before you start working so that you don't expose customers and you don't expose also other employees to this pandemic. And thirdly, I think it is also important to state this issue of making this issue personal. Today I was passing one of these towns in this country, and I found that people are not wearing the masks as required. Only a few people were doing so. The rest were doing it in a very haphazard manner. They are not actually, wearing the mask. They're just putting it on themselves. So I think, I believe that corona anywhere is corona everywhere. So we must ensure that we adhere to government regulations as directed by government at all times. Thank you.
Corona anywhere is corona everywhere. And that's true, by the way. It is really true. Let's go back to Kisumu. Mr. Owele, let's talk about part of your mandate again, advising the CES in the policies. Now, let's talk about this policy document. So we'd like to know, is it one or is it tailor-made for each sector? Because, we have different sectors. We have, the people who work under manufacturing industries, service. So is this policy document for one, cutting across all the services, or specifically for each sector, sir?
Thank you, Grace. We are talking about a wide sector, the whole working environment. And we are talking about offices, we are talking about farms, mines, we are talking about factories, and even the transport sector. So these are wide-ranging policies, and we have divided the policies into various blocks. We have the agricultural and health sector, we have the manufacturing sector, we have the mines and extractions, and we even have other allied sectors. So we come up with different policies as advised by the Directorate of Occupational Health and Safety on the possibility and way of implementation and advice. In terms of policy, some of them go even to the level of legislation, Grace.
Indeed. Thank you, sir. So I'm now told that we have Mr. Ernest Nadome, who is the Kotu Deputy Secretary General. Sir, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. We're glad to have you on set. Let's talk matters again, this pandemic, the COVID-19, because it has affected a lot of issues. Revenue streams have been lost, sir, and we have seen pay cuts. I mean, some companies are giving pay cuts of about 80%, 50%, 30, 25, 20. How far is too far?
Thank you very much, Grace. First, allow me to thank the panelists and also apologize for coming in late. I think there was some communication breakdown. Maybe before I respond to that question, let me join also the panelists in celebrating this particular day. As it was rightly put by Dr. Nyanduzi, it is an International Workers' Memorial Day. But from trade union perspective, we also had, other than that, we can also call it Workers' Mourning Day. This particular day, 28th, it is a day that we recognize the employees who have been killed, who have been disabled or injured or made unwell at workplace. And we are celebrating this at a particular time, at a point in time when this pandemic has really taken toll on workers. And that is why the International Trade Union Congress, Africa, has come up with the theme. The theme of the workers in this particular day today is to stop the pandemic. And as we do that, we are fully recognizing, we are applauding and paying homage to the frontline workers who have really done a lot in the recovery. And we also send our condolences to those particular workers, the families of those particular workers who have lost. Coming to how far this has gone, I can tell you, maybe in perspective, as we speak, the current labor laws do not address or do not provide how this particular pandemic is supposed to be addressed. How are we supposed to, as workers and representatives, we really don't have the guidelines. We don't have the laws to regulate how we should be able to address this. Yes, we have the fallback of our act, the OSH Act. But as we speak, we don't have, and that is why I can confidently say that so far, so good in terms of engagement between employers, workers, and the government. And also, let me single out the CS Labor, who has really made us burn midnight oil in coming up with the guidelines. So we are trying to develop guidelines that mirror the ILO guidelines on matters occupational safety and health. So that is where we are. As we speak, maybe I will not want to preempt the discussions that are already at the ministry level, but there are a raft of proposals that we are coming up with. We are now, the way we work has radically changed. We have employees who are working at home. So we recognize that as we are agreeing that anybody who is working at home now should be recognized, that particular person will be recognized as a workplace. There are issues, maybe to be specific on occupational health and safety. We are coming up with measures of really ensuring employees who are infected, employees who are affected, that burden should be taken over by the employer. Employees who lose their life should be treated just like normal accidents where the families are compensated. So we are coming up with those raft of issues. But I appreciate the fact that through the directive, through the guidelines that the directorate has also come up with, we are seeing a lot of positivities. We are seeing a lot of improvement in terms of workers adhering to these guidelines. So generally, that is where we are. In terms of workers, I know we've lost a number of workers, and most of the informal sector, where we are talking of 83%, a whooping 83% of employees are in the informal sector. Even as we speak, really, I think we have challenges. And I think I must bite the bullet. I know my colleagues, the panelists, some are the ministry, but I must say the truth from a workers' perspective, that we have had a lot of challenges with the director of the Ministry of Labor in terms of enforcement. It is one thing to portray a rosy picture of what we are doing, because even now, if I ask you, Grace, then when did you last see an inspector, safety inspector coming to you? We are talking of workers' committee. We have very good documents. Dr. Nyanduzi and his team and the council are really trying, but we must face the truth. There is no support. There is no financial support. We are talking of workers' committee. Are they working? We are talking of a labor inspection that is supposed to be done. Is it really? Where is it being carried out? So these are challenges, but we are happy that with this pandemic, you see the bitter truth now, with this pandemic, they are focused now, the government. The mainstream government is now also at labor, and more specifically on issues of occupation. So this is where we are. But we appreciate the effort so far made by the government on the issues, at least though minimum reducing tax from 25, 30 to 25, VAT. You see, that is also helping business. So we are working closely with business so that at least we sustain the jobs.
Something that Dr. Nyandusi needs to react to. But before we get to him, I want to stick with you, sir, because I asked about pay cuts. And I'm asking because this is an issue that has affected a lot of people. Now, you've said that there are no guidelines per se as to how we should deal with this pandemic, but we just want to know how far is too far. I mean, some organizations are issuing a 20% pay cut, 25, 30, 50, 80%. How far is too far?
But by the way, leave alone that. There are even some, I'm sorry without mentioning name, even at the media there, who are reducing employees' salary by half. But we thank the courts that were able to stop that. So what is there is, you see, there are situations. Let's look at the reality that is happening now in some of our institutions like the hospitality industry, where the hotel has been closed, literally been closed. The employer does not get anything. What do you do? How do you pay employees? And that is why we are impressing upon the government to see, despite the fact that we are really, even before this pandemic, we are already in the red as an economy. We have had countries where they are even assisting businesses in cushioning the payroll cost by paying almost 80%. So these are realities that we are saying that, and we are happy that the minister, our CS, has really been impressing, has really been pleading with employers that try your level best by making sure send employees on leave for the first month. The second month, maybe the next 15 days, let's still be on leave. If the situation worsens, then now you can talk of unpaid leave. This is where we are, and that is why the stimulus package that the government really, for employers also to be cushioned, I think the government needs to come in. We are also alive to what is happening. We are seeing businesses that cannot really cope up with the situation, and that's why the government, we are pushing, we are lobbying the government to see how, with the stimulus package, both fiscal and monetary, see how the businesses can also be sustained or survive. These are the economic times.
Indeed. But then moving forward, sir, you know, even post-COVID-19, what you've mentioned, is it something that we should wait for in terms of, you know, having some people working from home, others in the office, working in shifts? Is it something that is likely to be adopted post-COVID-19?
Grace, that one is inevitable. It is inevitable. The way we do our work is going to be a game changer, whether we like it or not. And if you read even today's article by my SG Francis Acholi, I think he's alluded to that fact that post-corona, I think we will have to change how we do work, the approaches. In the past, nobody ever thought that we could work from home. But the reality now is down on us. What are we doing? We are faced with it. And if that is the case, then we will also have to manage in terms of regulation. How do you treat? And that's why we are developing this kind of guidelines. Even now, as we speak, we are saying now, what do we do to those employees? There are employees who have been put on shift. There are employers also who are now putting employees on negative leave days. And we are engaging them. We are telling them, when you are putting an employee on negative leave day, are we saying post-corona, you will start recovering those leave days? Employees will not proceed on leave when they are due, or will they have to pay for it? So we are engaging, and that's why we are saying, in real sense, what is helping us now are the international labor standard instruments, and we are so happy that the Ministry of Labor is also embracing them. We may not be able to pick all those guidelines, but we are agreeing that we pick what we think the government can immediately implement, and the employers now will have to really adhere to that. That is what now we are working on.
Okay. And now it's time for Dr. Nyandusi to react. I haven't forgotten, Doc. Mr. Ernest Nadome here did say that, you know, we have good policies and everything, but there is no financial support. And he particularly pointed out, you know, from the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection. I don't know what you say about that.
Thank you, Grace. First, I would like to thank my brother Nadome. He's a trade unionist at heart and at mind. And he raises a lot of pertinent issues, which sometimes you need to look at them from the entire prism of reality. I think His Excellency the President in making his announcement about COVID, he equated it with a country being at war, and as well as, therefore, a world being at war. And most of the interventions that you can see have taken place would be interventions which are rare to be seen during peace times. So there is what happens on a day-to-day basis, and in understanding what happens in a day-to-day basis, then you can try to find solutions of what happens when you have a situation such as what we have. He has alluded correctly to our cabinet secretary, who has fully embraced the issue of social dialogue and the involvement of social partners in all the interventions in the workplace. And without revealing too much, I know that we do have frequent interactions and meetings where we see what the best way forward with the workplace is. And even today and yesterday, he was involved and we were there when we were discussing about what is the situation now and what needs to happen at work. To one extent, he is right in the sense that following the enactment of the Occupational Safety and Health Act, and all workplaces essentially falling under the ambit of the Direct Occupational Safety and Health Act, obviously there are resources that are subsequently required for one to effect the mandate, required to also commensurately have gone up. And we are constantly in discussion with the National Treasury. And we feel we are actually at a point where we may actually make a breakthrough, because some of the things that have happened in the last 1 year include the review of the legislative and institutional frameworks of the Directorate, in essence, to transform it into a semi-autonomous government agency, which is an authority responsible for safety and health at work, as well as work injury benefits. In which case, we should be able to not just expand the numbers, but also leverage heavily on technology to be able to reach the numbers. He did mention that it takes a long time before a workplace actually sees a safety and health officer, which may be right, but maybe he may not be alive to the fact that there are other innovative ways that the Directorate embraced in reaching the workplaces. Dr. Muruka did make a mention of the people we call approved persons. Now, an approved person is a person with technical competencies in certain spheres of safety and health who is able to go to the workplace as a representative of the director. So, for example, you may not see a safety and health officer actually coming to inspect your lift, but you will get a competent person who is appointed by the Director of Occupational Safety and Health, who actually comes and inspects your lift, who actually comes to conduct the audit and looks at the same points where a safety and health officer would be able would actually be looking at. So it's true that the footprint on the ground is a bit sparse, but it is also true that we have found innovative ways in which to reach the workplace. And if you ask the same workplaces whether they have seen an approved person, an auditor, an advisor, a plant inspector, they're likely to see that. Is it enough? Of course it's not enough. We have a wide workspace and we do have a lot of work to do. And we have to be alive to our roles and our obligations and the journey that we need to take, that understand where the gaps are and how far we need to go in order to get to the direction where we are going. And that I think we are alive to. Of course, the issue of the coronavirus, like I said, it's been a real game changer in looking at practically all systems in government. And safety and health is not so different. It's been a system looking at issues of employment security. What does it actually mean today? Looking at safety and health, what does it actually mean today? In many jurisdictions, we do have what we call unemployment insurance. And unemployment insurance, usually, if you've traveled to areas like Korea and other places like that, they do have what is deductible from employees and employers, and forms an insurance that now, in a setting such as this one, You could actually derive on that. If a worker loses a job out of no error of their own, he can be given a reasonable duration when he can be compensated for the work or the workplace for the same. These are certain things which obviously are missing. One of the other things he has alluded to is the fact that, that there is not inexistent a statutory mechanism to be able to compensate workers who would, for example, die in the line of duty, and he did mention the issue of frontline workers. I think the Directorate is also responsible for administration of work injury for people who get disabilities and deaths in the course of their work, and this includes both injuries and diseases. And if you look at Section 38 of the Work Injury Benefits Act, it actually includes the issue of occupational diseases. And yes, there is a defined list of occupational diseases, which is as per the ILO, but B also says any other disease contracted in the workplace in the course of your workplace. Mm-hmm. What may be missing is how do we do it? And there is an ongoing discussion about the need for us to actually have what we call the Occupational Diseases Fund. It's an ongoing discussion. We are discussing with the unions. We are discussing with the workers. It's something that has been going on for the last 5 years. Obviously, once again, COVID-19 really shows you that it's a huge gap of something that requires to be addressed. So yes, COVID-19 is a crisis, but in a sense, there's a silver lining to the cloud in the sense that it shows you where is wrong and where is it that you can fix. So I think it's a challenge, but if we don't meet up to the opportunities of the response in showing you what actually is missing, then I think we do miss on a much bigger, much bigger in terms of looking at similar happenings in future.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Muruka, I'd like us to take a look at some of the feedback that we are getting, and I mentioned you because I need your reaction to this. Yeah. Remember, our Twitter poll question today is, are you satisfied with the safety measures in your workplace? Of course, you can keep your feedback or questions coming to at Grace Career KE, at KTN's KE. Now, I'm asking for your reaction because they're pretty much the same. They have one common factor, which is the word no. To that question, Christian to Swafu 1, wow, says, not satisfied. I have parted with 2,000 or 1,000 every time I'm 15 minutes late from my work. Miss Kisangi says, not satisfied at all. In Vihiga County, we are working minor salaries for the past 7 months. Once depression sets in for the health workers, we don't know how Vihiga will handle COVID-19. That's her opinion there. And of course, we have Philip Marube, who says most workplaces in Kenya do not have a safety culture. Even before COVID-19, most personnel view safety as a form of punishment, and in most instances would want to violate such guidelines. We are more into compelled compliance and not as obligation. Now, there's more which I'll sample at the end of this program. There's this one, I didn't want to miss it. This is Brim. He says the question should be, are the employers and employees going as per the Occupational Safety and Health Acts? Let's get your reaction to that.
Thank you very much, Grace. I think, first of all, I want to say that any person who is not satisfied with the services in terms of occupational safety and health offered at the workplace should immediately get in touch with our officers. That is critical because sometimes they don't know and therefore they are not able to act immediately to sort out the issue. So we are located, we have offices in about 29 counties and one sub-county, that is Naivasha. And these are offices which are open to anyone to make complaints. So when we receive complaints, we should be able to deal with them appropriately. That is provided for under the law. So people should not fear. Now, if you are late for employment and you are charged 2,000 shillings, this is what you call an employment relations issue and not directly related to occupational safety and health. So you should be able to discuss with your employer or with your union or with a labor officer, because labor officers are there to ensure that such things that are contrary to international labor standards do not occur within the workplaces. So I would prefer that that person with a difficult name
Kristantu Swafuwan. Wow,
yes,
it's really mouthful.
Kristantu Swafuwan should get in touch with the labor officer to see what help could be available under the, the applicable laws. When it comes to depression, I want to say that it is probable that even during COVID-19, some workers will be depressed in the process. I want to advise employers and employees also. Employers first to see how to conduct risk assessment for depression within the workplaces, and therefore be able to send these people to people who can help them, doctors who are qualified in those particular areas. Employees should also look at themselves, reflect upon their life and their health, and then you have to be in charge of your health. Nobody else is. So if you see that there are certain things that are not normal or are deviating from normality, please get in touch with a doctor. The doctors are there to help during this period and even after this period. I totally agree that there is a deficiency with respect to safety culture, and that is one of the reasons why we have the World Day for Safety and Health, to promote occupational safety and health within workplaces and across the society. And I guess that is one of the reasons why we are here, Grace. The second thing is that this World Day for Safety and Health is also meant to create awareness about the burden of these kind of things and to ensure that we can direct everyone to start thinking about occupational safety and health and how it can help save lives, create healthy workers in the work environments, and ensure that workplaces are suitable for health and for people. Creating a safety culture starts with the top. So top managements, I would like to urge them to set the tone. If you set the tone in any workplace, you will be able to create or start the process of creating a safety culture. Most of you know that a culture is a process. It does not result in an effort of a few days. So it could be a few years, it could be a few centuries, but we need to create and work towards creating a safety and health culture within our work environments. Of course, this one does not leave employees outside in terms of creating a culture. Like now, the issue of washing hands and wearing a mask, it is going to be part and parcel of a culture, and people who don't embrace it are not going to blame the employers for this. So they must, and we must embrace culture at all levels. You cannot embrace culture in the workplace and outside you don't embrace it. It will not work like that. If you are creating a new culture, it is throughout your life, wherever you are at all times. So that would be my comments. With respect to trying to champion or to campaign for a safety culture, you saw recently that there was a demonstration of how to use a mask from the head of state. And I think if people embrace that, then they should be able to have a culture where everyone, His Excellency the President has set the tone, and therefore everyone else must follow suit. Thank you very much.
Indeed. Mr. Charles Owele, let's talk matters industrial actions, and especially now because tomorrow, Wednesday, there is an, if I'd call it an impending strike by some medical unions, even though the KMPDU has distanced itself from that strike. But we expect that strike tomorrow, Wednesday. So let's talk about your place in averting this strike, sir, if you can hear me, and especially, again, falling back to your mandate advising the CS in policies. So let's talk about your place in averting such strikes, sir. Mr. Owele, if you can hear me, let's talk about your place in averting strikes by, various cadres. Tomorrow, we are expecting, okay, I'm told we have lost him there. But of course, regardless, the conversation does continue. That's for both Mr. Owele and Mr. Ernest Nadome there. Okay, but thank you for joining us today. So let me just come back to you, Dr. Nyandusi, and now let's talk about how you are able, your organization is able to monitor and regulate this adherence, both in public and private institutions. Let's talk about that.
First, at the time when we realized that the COVID-19, when we are interacting with our international partners, was going to be a workplace issue, we had a long meeting in the week of the 7th of March, and the 14th of March, we actually issued an advisory to all workplaces regarding COVID-19 and mitigation. And thereafter, after that, I think on this month, I think on the 16th, we issued a further advisory for persons with disability, basically at the workplace. Like I said, the department has many ways that it gets into the workplace. And of course, one of the ways we get into the workplaces is through our audits. And in interacting with our audits, we have given additional requirements for when audits are being conducted to also include the readiness of the workplace, towards mitigation of COVID-19, both in terms of the safety of their workers, those who still must continue working, as well as their clients. Their customers. And that has been ongoing. Of course, we are also open. We've been having discussions with, we've been having discussions with our social partners, FKE and COTU, regarding the same, and led by our cabinet secretary, like our FKE partners mentioned, we've actually been sitting down creating an agreeable guideline towards the mitigation of the effect at the workplace.
Okay. Now, we're almost wrapping up, but I'm told we have Mr. Charles Owele, he's back. So I was asking, if you can hear me, Mr. Owele, I was asking about, your place in averting strikes. Classic example being that one which we expect tomorrow from some medical unions. So what is your place in averting such industrial actions, sir?
I think this is a time that we need to pull together in one direction. It's a time that we need sacrifices in how we handle any issues that come as a challenge. So I would like to advise the various parties to take cognizance of the sensitivity of such an action at this time, and come to a round table and resolve the issues at hand.
But then again, sir, what's your place in averting them? Because yes, you're asking them to come together, especially now, because we need them, especially being part of the frontline, workers. But what's your place in ensuring this doesn't happen? Because for them to get to a place where they're saying they're going to down their tools, then they have their reasons. So what are you doing to avoid such situations?
We have the front players in this kind of situation. Of course, we have regulations, due procedures in handling essential services as what we are dealing with now. And I think the various players will take it up.
Okay. Let's now go to the COTU Deputy Secretary General, Mr. Ernest Nadome. And this is actually because you mentioned this day as a workers' mourning day. Let's talk about, some people, they've lost their lives in the line of duty, body parts, some have sustained injuries. Let's talk about what you do for such workers who lose an arm, a leg, or anything else, in their line of duty.
Okay, thank you very much, Grace. Maybe if you allow me to comment a bit about the nurses' strike. Can I mention something?
Sure,
you
sir.
See,
sure you can.
The law provides for before workers engage in an industrial action, let's say in the form of a strike, it envisages a situation whereby you cannot just wake up and call a strike tomorrow morning and ground your tools. The law gives the parties room to look at the issues, and that is why what the unions were saying is that they will give notice. They are going to issue a notice of a strike tomorrow, and the law talks about a minimum of 1 week. So to me, and rather to us as KOTU, it gives room to the parties concerned to look at the issues in the context of COVID-19. And as KOTU, our SD is already in touch with the CS Labor. He's also in touch with the CS Health in an effort to avert this situation, because really what they have raised makes a lot of sense, is justified. And they have also talked about the package, the welfare package that the president instructed the public service to look at. And that package, you see the complaint is there is no level playing ground in terms of rewarding or giving at least an incentive to incentivize this particular health workers. They are talking of it has benefited the doctors alone, them, the nurses, the low cadre, they have not benefited. And they are also talking about PPEs. So these are things that, and if I remember yesterday, the CS Health, the media posed the same questions, wanted to know, and they say discussions are going on. So hopefully that the discussions, even if the union issues are noticed, that should give parties room to sort out these issues. I agree with Oele that this is not the time to call a strike, really, but it also calls for both parties really to be sober, look at the issues that have been raised. And we have had casualties, as you rightly put. We have seen what we've lost doctors out there, and we are told some doctors and some nurses are also now infected with this COVID. And it's really, maybe it's because of carelessness or because of negligence, not providing the PPE. And simply, the minimum that they want us, we want PPEs. And they're also saying we want a level playing ground in terms of really incentivizing and not just looking at the top notch and leaving them down there. Now, coming to the issue of accidents at work, I want to say that it is neither here nor there. It all boils down to some of the institutions, but in terms of compensating workers, we have had cases of workers staying, living in court, pursuing such kind of cases. But we are happy with this Occupational Safety Act that came into place 2007, as Nyandusi has put it. It has really streamlined how things are supposed to do, the issues of claims and all that. We have the WIBA Act. What do we do when an employee is involved in an accident? We have the director that is supposed to really address this. So as we speak, I think the situation has improved, but there is more and more that has to be done. And there is also the aspect of information. There is the aspect of sensitizing the workers to know their rights. I think this is an area that we still have the social partners, the ministry, and more specifically, the Director of Occupational Health and Safety, and or Ministry of Labor. We have to go out of our way to really let the workers know it is their right. But we are ensuring that the employer does its part in terms of providing safety gear.
Thank you, sir. Sorry, just allow me to cut you short there. Time is really not on our side. I need to get your closing remarks, please, in under a minute. If I could start with you, Dr. Nyandusi, in under a minute, please.
Thank you, Grace. I think today, let's not forget what today is. Today is the day for the World Day for Safety and Health. And let's not forget what today portends, and let's not forget what today means in the setting of COVID. Let us embrace the culture of safety and health as individuals, because then it makes it easier for us to embrace the sense of the culture of safety and health as organizations and as a country. I think those really are my comments.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Andrew?
Today is the World Day for Safety and Health, and the theme is Stop the Pandemic. Safety and health can save lives. If we live by this, then we must know that COVID-19 is our common enemy, and we must work all together to defeat COVID-19 at the workplaces. If we go separate ways, we will fail, and we cannot fail at this moment. Thank you.
Indeed. Mr. Ovela?
Yeah, we should take advantage of this situation and capture all the challenges, the impacts in the work environment, report this to the relevant bodies like Directorate of Health and Safety so that we are able to come up with rules that will safeguard us even as we go into the future should such cases arise.
Indeed. Mr. Nadome, you have the last say.
Yeah, thank you, Grace. Mine is, maybe as I put my last word, is really to implore the government to upscale mass testing, because at least with the mass testing, we should be able to know the extent of the pandemic. But so far, so good in terms of the measures the government has put in. So ours, and I echo the words of my other panelists, is for workers, ours is stop the pandemic by religiously following the guidelines that the government has issued out. But even as we do that, I want on behalf of the workers of this country to really recognize, applaud, and pay homage to our frontline workers, and also other workers who are in the essential service. I think they're also being forgotten. There are workers who are in essential service who are really trying their level best to make sure that we are able to mitigate ourselves against this COVID-19. Thank you.
Indeed. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, my panelists, for joining me this afternoon. Dr. Musa Nyandusi, the Acting Director, Directorate of Occupational Safety and Health Services. Dr. Andrew Muruka, the Head of the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. Mr. Charles Owele, who is a member at the National Advisory Council on Occupational Safety and Health. And, of course, Mr. Ernest Nadome, the Kotu Deputy Secretary General. Thanks for joining me this afternoon. Now, we did ask if you're satisfied with the safety measures in your workplace. Let me just go through the feedback quickly. Philip Marubi on Twitter says, safety is a foreign idea in many workplaces and therefore most will comply, though reluctantly. Some companies pass the cost to its employees. A majority will try meeting the minimum requirements, but largely will not meet the standards. Morientes Kabora says, hapa mjengo hakuna any safety measures. We have one more from Dunnington Lidoto who says, no masks, no PPEs. And the worst thing is HCWs have gone, healthcare workers have gone 6 months without paying, nothing to smile about. One last one, please. George Diaz Wafula, he says, depression will kill health workers in Vihiga County after being denied a salary for 7 months. Kindly highlight this. We have. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you to my panelists. Of course, this was a special broadcast this afternoon focusing on the World Day for Safety and Health at Work, which is today. And of course, under the theme, Stop the Pandemic, Safety and Health at Work Can Save Lives. My name is Grace Korea. Thanks for tuning in. Of course, up next is Mbiu ya